How you guys doing? This is Mike from 603 MTech Autowerks. Today we're going to be doing a common problem video in your M156 6.2 liter AMG engine. So number one, we're going to start with the head bolts. So these head bolts are very common to break. And basically what you want to do is you want to update them to the newer head bolts. Sometimes what I've personally seen one, is these head of the bolts break off because they rust because these bolts are actually in a coolant passage. And it would cause coolant to get in the engine and cause misfires. So number one, I would say, is head bolts. Number two, we're gonna go with the camshaft and the camshaft lifters. So basically what can happen with these is these cams will wear into the lifters and cause premature wear, and you'll have a ticking noise, especially on cold startup. So what they find is people have been running the 5W40 versus the 0W40 AMG oil, but those can be very common, especially in your older models. So number three, we're gonna go with the camshaft adjusters. So these are this one actually needed them, but it causes an excessive rattle noise on cold startup. Basically, it doesn't build up enough pressure and causes a rattle noise. So this is another one of those common problems. A lot of people will rebuild them, but you can also replace them. So camshaft adjusters is number three. And number four, we're gonna go with Hall sensors. So these are very known to go bad, and basically what will happen is it shuts down the whole side of this engine, causing misfires on all banks. So this is a good preventative item, pretty cheap and very easy to change. So Hall sensors. So another common problem are idler pulleys. They're very known to go on these, but I would say any Mercedes models, typically around 60K, you would definitely want to check these idler pulleys. But I will say this is a very tight engine, and the belt's not the easiest to replace, and there's a couple additional pulleys, so I'd recommend highly looking into those idler pulleys if you were to purchase one of these vehicles. Our next common problem is oil leaks. Just like any Mercedes engines, they all leak oil, all German cars. But we got the oil filter housing gasket here. This one was leaking severely. You can see it's just caked up all down there. And also valve cover gaskets. Those are very, very common to leak on these. This one was actually leaking. This valve cover was actually cracked as well. So valve cover gaskets and oil filter housing, and also the oil line O-rings. So there's O-rings here, but there's also O-rings on the side of the block right over here. So those are very, very common to leak, and that's a pretty intensive job in the car, these oil lines. It's not intense, but it's not a fun job to do. The next one, intake manifolds. So these intake manifolds have been known to crack, leak, and also the throttle bodies are inside the intake manifold, and those are also known to go. So they are pretty expensive because they come with two throttle bodies that are inside, but they've also been known to leak from the gaskets or the bolts that hold the intake manifold down to actually break and cause a leak. So that is definitely something to look into, and definitely a common issue. Next is the Crankcase Breather valve that's on the back of the engine. These are very common to go, will cause, maybe excessive smoke on startup and consumption of oil. Definitely one of the biggest things that everybody is replacing, especially if they're gonna have their intake manifold out. It's very easy to change. So another big common problem with these engines are fuel injectors. I've personally seen them on the M159 that are found in your SLS, which is basically the same engine as the 156, it just has a dry sump. But what happens with these injectors is they stick open, and then they can basically cause engine failure and also cause your engine to run very, very rough. We just had one in here. So definitely look into replacing these fuel injectors if you have this vehicle. So I would say the last thing we're gonna end on is engine mounts. Basically, this engine's got a lot of power, and they're very known to rip through these engine mounts. You can see we're gonna be replacing these ones as well. along with resealing this whole thing. That's why the engine's down. But your engine mounts are another one of those common issues that we see on these AMGs. Thank you guys for watching this video on our M156 common problems. If you have this engine or you're looking to purchase this engine, just know these are some of the common issues that may arise.